Cash, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man. I love the Pop Culture Unplugged. It's very fun to be a part of pop culture for real.
That's right away. Yeah. I mean, and now second time, and you've been, like I went back to our conversation and I watched it and I listened to it and the return of Bigfoot now, how does it feel like, it's cemented in finally for you, the audience? How does this feel?
It feels wonderful. You know, a character like that brings a little bit. I'm glad to be a part of it. It's the biggest show in the world right now, and
Mm,
you know, working with guys like Sylvester Stallone. I mean, what more could you want?
right, right. For you now, has anything changed for you professionally, personally, since season one dropped, now season two's out?
It's been pretty crazy busy. A lot of people reaching out. A lot of opportunities
That's
have
good.
have have come my way. To do some cons. To talk to the media, and it's actually been pretty crazy. I've had the opportunity to catch a little bit of a break. After the third season wrapped. Going into the fourth or whatever. So it's I've welcomed it. It's been
Mm.
busy though.
Been busy. I mean, it's great. Like, you guys were filming season two, season three got renewed right away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. The show, like I said, it seems to be the biggest show in the world right now, and I'm proud of all the crew and all the hard work that everybody has done put into this
Mm.
show, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Do you get the Bigfoot call when people see you, the fans?
Oh yeah, it's Bigfoot now. Cash, people that know me still call me Cash, but there's a lot of Bigfoot out there. My head's on a swivel whenever I'm out anymore.
Mhm. So this season, Bigfoot, larger presence with the gang and everything. Like, how did you approach him differently this time around?
Um, well, it started with figuring out that part of it. The
Mm,
character, where the character was going to play in.
yeah,
He still is Dwight's heater. And
yeah.
it's all about the boss, and he gives me these little quips here and there, and I try to give the character justice,
Yeah.
based on how the writers see the character at, and I try to give my own little inflections there, just to see where it goes.
Mm,
They use it. If they don't, they do their magic.
right. I was telling my wife the other night, we are watching it. I want to see more of Bigfoot's story behind, like, how did he get where we are?
I mean, maybe that'll come, maybe it won't. Maybe there's reasoning behind the mystery.
Mm,
Sometimes mystery garners interest. There's a such thing as overexposure. um
mm,
and I'm just having fun doing what they need me to do. We'll see where it goes. It's an
yeah,
interesting character for sure.
definitely.
That's for
So,
sure.
without spoiling too much, any new sides of Bigfoot that we're gonna see this season? A
I
different side of
believe
him.
I believe you will. I think you will see some callbacks,
Mm,
maybe to Kentucky and stuff that Bigfoot has done previously. I do think that you see a different side of him,
mm.
you know, um, whether that's good or bad, maybe, we'll see. I'm not trying to give anything away, but, there's a lot of season three left. So,
Mm. What do you think makes him stand out though? Because like the fans are, this is a fan favorite now. Everybody likes Bigfoot.
I, what do I think makes him stand out? It was like we were just talking about. I think the mystery.
Mm,
They hint. Last season they hinted to where he come from, and this season they're developing. The character, the personality of the character is starting to develop. It's like a slow burn. I think that's where it lies.
mm,
Mystery garners interest, and I'm I'm happy to be, I'm happy to
yeah,
garner that. I'm happy to be that. So,
mm. How would you describe his journey in season three?
um, how would I describe his journey? He takes a lot.
Okay.
He gives a lot. Um, I think Bigfoot, as a member of the group per se,
Hmm.
his main focus will be on Dwight,
Yeah.
on the boss. I think that as it goes along, he tries and he tries to you know do what he thinks is best. Sometimes it works out, maybe sometimes not so much, but I the journey, he's slowly becoming who he's supposed to be.
Hmm. How would you describe his relationship with Dwight?
Um,
Do you think it's
kind of
just
like
you think it's just work, or you think they're becoming buddies too at the same time?
I think the buddy aspect is there. I don't think Bigfoot as a character will ever look at him. I think Bigfoot as a character, even going back to last season, I think he looks at Dwight as somebody that gave him an opportunity
Mm,
that nobody else would. Coming out from Kentucky looking for work, that whole backstory, whatever. And I think it continues on in this season. He's really grateful, and he meant, he would do whatever it took to feed the family. And
mm.
I think that progresses, I believe, as you go.
Have you been? Do you get any input on this character? How you want to play him, or like bounce off ideas between Stallone and the creators?
Um, I bounce anything and everything that I can off
Yeah,
of Sylvester Stallone. The guy is a wealth of knowledge. There's that old cliche, he's forgotten more than I'll ever learn.
yeah.
And it's true. He went from nothing to, one of the biggest stars in the world, and he has a wealth of knowledge. So everything, any ideas that I have that I would, I would bounce off of him. What
Mm,
do you think about, going this way, or what do you think about me saying it like this, or
mm,
anything that I would have, and the different directors that are involved, they're really helpful to me too. The Jim McKays and all those guys, they're really helpful to me too. Uh, Joe and uh, a couple other guys. They're anybody that'll listen. Even the co-stars.
mm.
Garrett, Annabella, Dana, Frank. Chris. Even the co-stars. I'm trying. Because they all have a lot more experience
Yeah,
than I have. So I'm trying to get it from all directions. It's all about learning. You
right,
know, you,
right.
you can never have too much knowledge.
You mentioned all your colleagues also that are on set. Is there anybody that you hope down the future Bigfoot has more scenes with that you haven't had the chance yet,
Um,
or a certain character?
I mean, I actually, all of them would be fun to play with and interact with.
Yeah,
Chris and McKenna and Jay and all of them. From guy who plays Fred and
yeah,
Clint. I mean,
yeah.
you
Some
know,
funny guys.
yeah, they both. Martin Starr. I've I tend, because he's a wealth of knowledge as well. He has a lot of experience. I got the opportunity to hang out with him and do some things with Martin. He's really interesting to talk to. He's an interesting
Mm,
personality. So all those guys. I would love to share screen time with those guys.
mm. What's the one key of advice that any of those guys have given you that stuck with you the most?
Well, be who you are
Mm,
and how you interpret. Don't question. And because if something is not liked, or something is not how they would like it, they will let you know
yeah.
and rerun it. Okay. So bring what you're going to bring, and don't second guess yourself. Don't doubt yourself. You're there for a reason. Be who you're supposed to be. And if something needs to be tweaked or something like that, take chances.
Mm,
Take chances. That's probably the biggest thing. And not only that, it allows you to be more comfortable too.
mm.
While you're behind, that camera and all those eyes are on you. So That's really the biggest takeaway that I've gotten thus far.
Hmm. What's been the biggest challenge for you with this character? Any
The biggest challenge is, because of who he is and the type of role that he has. A lot of times it is, you're in the background,
yeah.
and staying in the moment, as that character, especially with the people that you're around and what's going on, you know. So that's been kind of a challenge to me,
Hmm.
because yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say it. I'm I've been in the forefront, my whole career when it comes to wrestling,
Yeah.
and taking that step back and being who I'm supposed to be in this has been a challenge to me.
Hmm.
But it's a welcome challenge, and I'm liking to do it. Whatever, whenever they need me to do that.
Hmm.
And
Are
I
you
could
do
I could do the other if they needed to
are
too.
you doing your own fight scenes this season?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I'm doing whatever stunts they need me to do.
Okay. Yeah.
Working close with Freddie Poole, and I'm doing whatever it is that they need me to do. For whatever reason, they're hard pressed to find a stunt double for me.
Yeah. That's not. I guess that's not a bad thing though.
No, it is what it is. You know.
Hmm. What has excited you most about season two? Like when you read the script and everything and Bigfoot's arc, what went through your mind when you're reading the scripts?
About season two or season
Yeah.
three? You talking
Season
about
three, I meant, sorry.
read because the way that I read stuff, even when I read books or whatever, because I am such a movie buff and I've always, watched television and watched movies. Whenever I read something like that, I
Yeah.
read it as a movie, as it
Okay.
flows.
Yeah.
And seeing that and seeing how it interprets, and then seeing, how it actually turns out, so it's you have to put it all together. The difference in that, is very interesting to me,
Mm.
how it is on paper versus, whatever changes might be made, whatever edits might be made, to how it comes together as a whole. And does the actual overall story change? I would just, it seems to sometimes, because they feel a little bit better going in this direction or whatever. So that the whole dynamic there is very interesting to me.
Was Bigfoot always the nickname, or did they come up with anything else at first and they came down with that? Do you know?
Uh,
No,
Bigfoot
always
is what
been.
they gave me. I don't have any insight into, the whole process of doing the characters.
Mm.
I always assumed it's because I have a big head and I'm hairy. I look like Bigfoot.
There you go. Any how do you prepare to jump into this role? Do you do anything in the behind the scenes before you get into kind of like, when you're about to step in the ring, is there anything that you do behind the scenes?
You know what? No. It's like coming through a curtain. You
Mm,
get used to the switch that you flip. I can stand behind the curtain, be who I am, and then walk through the curtain and be who I'm supposed to be. The trick and the challenge here is figuring out where the curtain should be. When it comes to being on
yeah.
set and being behind the camera. But I don't have any issues. I really dive into the scripts and where we're at and what it is that we're filming for the day,
Yeah.
so I can put it in my head and I can put my in those moments. No matter how small a part that I may play, I always want to genuinely, for the character, be in those moments so I can react.
Mm,
Because you never know. Sly sometimes will throw something at you that isn't there, and
yeah.
if you're not in the moment, you know, you're not going to catch it and you're not going to
Yeah.
react. And
Mm,
I I like to pride myself on being in those moments.
mm. 3 seasons in, what's the one thing you've learned the most, you think, from being on a
In
show like
season
this?
three,
No, like
season three,
overall, like all the episodes you've done for Tulsa King, what's the one key lesson that you learned that sticks with you to this day?
uh, to truly make good, captivating television, it takes an army,
Mm,
and everybody has to work together. If one finger or one one appendage is off, it affects everybody else. It truly, the public sees, you know, three, four, five, six people, as the face of it. But it truly does take a small village to produce and put something like that together. And it amazes me that the coordination that goes into that. So I've learned that something like that
Yeah.
is and of course you got Sylvester Stallone, but
Right. Right. Have
that
you
makes
heard?
things a little easier.
Yeah. Have you heard any stories about how many seasons you think he wants to do, or he just says we're going to keep going as much as we can? What's the plan?
I mean, that's what I've heard. They're going to keep going as much as they can. They're really excited about being renewed for season 4, and that Terry Winters has come back and is going to helm the writers' room. So
Yeah.
they're pretty excited and pretty stoked.
And you guys, it looks like you guys filmed these seasons pretty fast too, huh? A couple months.
No, it took about as long as it did last
It
year.
did.
They might
Okay.
it might not have been as long, but just by a little bit. I don't think you can rush
Mm,
something like some of these TV shows. You have to. There's a line that you don't want to cross as far as trying to push stuff out, because then the production suffers a little bit.
Where do they film this exactly? Is it in Tulsa?
It's the on set in Atlanta. Of course,
Okay.
we done some pickup stuff in Tulsa, some pickup stuff in New York.
Okay.
Um, we've done it's mostly in Atlanta, but the way those productions work, like I said, we've done some pickup stuff in New York. We went to New York for a little while, and then of course Tulsa.
Hmm. Last question. I was supposed to ask you this. If Bigfoot could get his own spinoff, what would you want it to, what would you want to name the show?
Well, if Bigfoot could get his own spinoff, honestly, Elias, I've not really thought about it too much.
Hmm.
Um, I would honestly, I would lean more towards a supernatural type of show, because I'm a horror, science fiction,
Yeah.
supernatural type of guy. I would lean forward towards like a Bigfoot monster hunter or something like that.
There you go. There you go.
I think that would be good.
Hmm. How's the wrestling career? You're still behind the scenes with that, or are you just kind of trying to stay with the TV stuff now?
Well, I've taken a little bit of break. I did some appearances during this little break, but
Yeah.
I knew they had talked about wanting later on this year we were going to come back. So I decided that I was going to take the time, spend it with my family, and
There you
take a
go.
little bit of a break. I've done a few cons, and I did a couple matches, and done a couple appearances, but other than that, I've just strictly you know,
Focusing on
bringing
this.
it back in.
Yeah. That's Cash. It's always great to catch up with you. We'll have to do another chat with the next season, see where he
Absolutely,
is.
Elias. Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. I'd love to chat with you guys. Like I said, Pop
Yeah.
Culture Unplugged.
There you
What's
go.
better than pop culture, man?
There you go. That's